And between the hours of 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock, these trucks had never been in this building before. It was an anomaly. Definitely, it wasn't like it was going on for months and months and it just continued. They showed up for 10 days, 10 or 11 days approximately, then they were never seen again. And that's when they believe they wired the building. And they do believe, and my friend told me absolutely it was a thermite bomb with, it was a thermite bomb with potential sulfur in it. The sulfur makes it, the important thing about a thermite bomb is it is an extraordinary heat-reducing bomb. Okay, it takes steel and it creates molten steel. So it takes beams of steel and it turns everything underneath just sinks into the ground like what you saw. And it is a special U.S. military-grade weapon. Okay, it is a military-grade weapon. It's not something you could make ever in your kitchen or your garage or your living room. It is impossible for you to do this. This is a U.S. military weapon. And so I do believe that that helps to explain some of the missing pieces. And I believe this is what happened. They'd known about the terrorist attack for months. There is a long-term advanced knowledge. Assets are being watched. The so-called terrorists, whether you want to think of them as whether they're real, Mohammed Atta was an asset trained by the United States government, supervised by the United States government. And I can assure you that assets, and I'm speaking directly from my own personal experience, assets are heavily controlled individuals. I was never dealing with Iraq and Libya without somebody paying extremely close attention to me at every stage, and my phones were tapped. I mean, at some point they had wired my house. When they had the handover of the 2 Libyan men, I went down to my basement the same day that they handed over the men, and my ceiling of my basement had been torn out, and there were cable wires dangling from the ceiling, about a dozen cable wires. And I had a contractor come over to my house, and he said, "Wow, somebody really put a kick-ass stereo system in your house. That's amazing." He said, you have these wires going to every single room of your house, even in your bathroom." And I was like, ew. You know, but yeah, but he was like, he said it's everywhere. He said, "You must have like a stereo system that just, you know, rocks in this house." So anyway, but the point is that assets, there's no way that these assets could have functioned without everyone knowing every single detail of what they were doing. There's no way they could have hidden. They could not have disguised actions from their handlers. Even if they tried to disguise it, it wouldn't work. Believe me, it wouldn't work. No, it's impossible. Impossible. And so it's more likely that they were using Mohammed Atta to guide the conspiracy, to track the conspiracy, and then they discovered that they were bozo pilots, they were clowns, they weren't any good at this flying stuff, and now they had an agenda. And the agenda was that when this attack happened, they were going to go to war with Iraq. But, oh gosh, we've got a problem now. Because the problem is they're not going to be able to do the job. Uh-oh. Oh, what a bummer. We're not going to be able, see, here's the thing about all, and I'm speaking now, again, from experience. The 1993 World Trade Center attack killed 5 people. The bombing of the USS Cole killed 12 people. And once the smoke clears and the catastrophe, the chaos is over, and the noise is done, it's pretty, you know, it's like, it's all, there's not a lot of, certainly not enough that would allow a government, a pro-war cabal, to throw itself into a new war with Iraq, which they wanted to do. They'd already decided to do it. And so that is the motivation. The thing is, there can never be any police officer will tell you, there is no crime without a motive and opportunity. And we had both. So it's not like they just spontaneously wired the World Trade Center. They knew it was coming, and they wanted to make sure that they had maximum damage when it hit. They knew they were going to use the airplanes as the cover to demolish the building. So it's not, you know, a lot of people in the 9/11 truth community have gotten kind of, at first, when I first broke this news, they were like, you know, a lot of people attacked me and they said, you're saying there were airplane hijackings. No, no, there was a demolition. And I'm like saying, no, no, there's both of it. Both things happened. They knew this, they knew the airplanes were going to be hijacked, so they used it as a cover for to guarantee maximum destruction because they already knew the consequence of war. So
that's all I'll do. I'm not going to get into the rest, but our current situation is pretty bad, and you can see what's happened, and there's plenty of stuff out there to watch. All of the evidence shows controlled demolitions. If nothing else, look at Building 7, the third building that fell, and the way it fell at free fall speed. That simply does not happen without the use of explosives. Look at the control the government has gotten over the world and our liberties since then. As I said before, this video here rocks. And the 9/11 part starts at 1:38:56, 1 hour, 38 minutes, 56 seconds. Know that Ron Paul is the only candidate running that will do what is right. Here's what Ron Paul has to say about the corrupt and treasonous Federal Reserve.
I mean, it is very clear what we should be doing. The founders knew and understood something about inflation. The runaway inflation of the continental dollar was devastating to the economy, so they were explicit. They said no emitting of bills of credit, no printing money, no paper money, and that only gold and silver should be legal tender. There is no authority in the Constitution authorizing a central bank, which means there should be no Federal Reserve System. No!
Today we know that the Fed was involved with about $15 trillion in the bailout. A third of it went to foreign central banks and private banks overseas. And this is very disturbing. At the same time, just think of all the people who have suffered in this country. All the people who have lost their mortgages and their homes. At the same time, we're bailing out the central banks. Right now, the Federal Reserve and our Treasury is very much involved in the bailouts going on in Europe. And quite frankly, I believe we will end up bailing out the banks that hold this Greek debt. This is the #1 reason why the American people should be very concerned.
Congressman, it's a pleasure. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
You had a very lively day on Capitol Hill because Chairman Ben Bernanke was testifying before the House Budget Committee, while some economists were testifying before your subcommittee on monetary policy. Question. Is it a pipe dream that we can rein in the Fed, or might we really do it this time around?
Well, I think that's up in the air. I don't know the answer to that. I know that we're going to be determined to try, but I also know and recognize to really diminish the effort last year. We did get some information, but not as much as we want. So yes, we will be determined to do it. But the big thing is the real evidence is going to come under very painful conditions, because I don't think we can rescue the system and get it out of the hands of the Fed in time to save the calamity. I think their policies have been so damaging over these many, many decades that regardless, we are going to suffer from it. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try, and if we don't get exactly what we want, I think we ought to really work hard on allowing a little bit of competition with this cartel who runs the show, and they're the official counterfeiter. So that will be my attack.
Chairman Bernanke actually told the House Budget Committee that he thinks that budget deficits are too big and budget deficits can cause problems. He is the cause. He personally is the cause, the root, the reason for that some of those budget deficits are so high, because he can give the federal government all the cash they want whenever they want it.
And that's a bit of a moral hazard, because, you know, big government conservatives and big government liberals get together and they spend money, and he takes care of it and keeps the interest rates low so we don't get the signal that we're, you know, draining the market of all the cash. But, you know, just think of the amount he spends. He spends more money in a year than we do. He's put in $4 trillion here in these last couple years, and it's off the books. It's not even on the budget. So where does he get the credibility to criticize the Congress? As bad as they are, I have the credibility to criticize the Congress because I don't vote for him. But here he is. He spends more money than the Congress, and he bails out foreign banks and bails out everybody else. And then he said, oh, now if Congress would have a balanced budget, we wouldn't have any problems. I mean, it's pure hypocrisy because he monetizes the debt and he encourages big spending.
You have spent the greater part of your career educating the public about the dangers of the Fed, and you almost single-handedly have persuaded the nation that we need to know a great deal more about the Fed and need to be wary about letting it do whatever it wants to do. But you're not going to be able, most respectfully, to persuade Ben Bernanke to cough up his books on the basis of your persuasion. You're going to have to use the tools available to you as a member of Congress, and now, happily, as chairman of the House Subcommittee on Domestic Monetary Policy, to force him to open those books. Can you do that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because, last year they used the law to try to force him under the Freedom of Information Act, and he just ignored it and goes to court and ties it up in court for years. Let's say we get a good law passed for transparency and auditing the Fed. He's going to take it to the courts. It'll be dragged out for a couple of years, and he can spend as much money as he wants because he prints it. So he has all the legal power to do it, and he will probably just ignore it. And unfortunately, historically, the courts have been very much in favor of central banks. Sound money rarely gets protected by our courts. So I hate, it'll sound like a pessimist, but everything that we do, I think, is valuable because it's telling the people what's going on. They have to direct their attention. Today we tried to tie the Federal Reserve to unemployment, which I think is an easy connection to make. And then if and when that time comes when we need to have a sound monetary system, knowledge to the people is what is important. Jefferson knew this, and the people knew what to do then, and Andrew Jackson knew about it. And periodically, times come in our history where the people say, we have to have sound money. So there's two things going on. One is to get more information and propose changes and competition. The other is to prepare for that day that unfortunately is going to come when, the Federal Reserve is going to do themselves in. I mean, they're going to destroy the money, and of course that's a very dangerous situation.
I don't think Jefferson exaggerated at all when he said central bankers can be more dangerous or more powerful than standing armies. Central bankers, this one in particular, could be more powerful than the president because he doesn't have to answer to anybody, because he can just add zeros to whatever bank account he wants to add zeros to.
So he's more powerful than the president, and I just mentioned he's more powerful than the Congress. So a few years ago when I would say that, oh, no, it's impossible, the president runs the world, and he has the armies. But you point out that the control of the monetary system is most likely more powerful than even our president.
Congressman Paul, it's a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us.